Welcome all to this Mortals Watch Today mini, focusing on Derek Hargreaves' photograph entitled Farrier Shoeing a Horse, Walton, 1950s. The picture dates from the early 1950s and captures a moment in time that could have represented any year in Liverpool's history up to this date, the reliance upon horsepower being almost as common to the post-World War II Mersey generation as it had been to their Edwardian, Victorian and Georgian forebears. Indeed, the most striking thing about Hargreaves' exquisite photograph is the timeless quality it seems to codify, a factor best emphasised by the absolute paucity of datable evidence present in the composition itself. Students of social history will be especially hard-pressed to pick out anything here, from the style of the underclothing on the washing line in the background, to the tack the cart horse carries, to the leather habiliment the farrier himself is wearing, even the cobblestone paving on the right that suggests the scene is not in fact much older than it claims to be. This was undoubtedly a conscious choice on the part of the photographer who, at the time the picture was taken, was operating out of a studio based on Furnace Street and had seen many changes wrought to the surrounding area of Old Walton on the Hill village, such as the continuous building of new electrified modern council houses, the rise of the motor car, and improvements to domestic sanitation. Despite the fact that Walton had been part of Liverpool since 1895, the area still retained an old-world feel that by the time this photograph was taken was coming increasingly under threat, and so the choice of subject was not coincidental. The Hargreaves name will be familiar to anyone cognizant of photographic suppliers in Liverpool, as Derek Hargreaves was the same gentleman who owned and operated the equipment store on Warbreck Moor for many years. As a rare example of his skilled prowess behind the camera, though, Farrier Shoeing a Horse is composed in a similar way to popular genre paintings by Edwin Landseer or Liverpool's own George Stubbs, familiar to generations of children and adults alike through reprographic prints in picture magazines such as the Daily Sketch or the Sphere. For those unfamiliar with the practice of shoeing a horse, it's worthwhile recounting exactly what the farrier is doing here. Work horses, especially carters or dray horses of the kind in the photograph, are particularly liable to experience extreme wear and imbalance on their hooves, owing to the heavy and repetitive nature of the task they have to perform. In this instance, the farrier is using a rasp to smooth out the cracked or worn edges of the horse's hoof prior to replacing what appears to have been a thrown shoe. The stand on the floor next to the farrier is used to rest the horse's toe upon when rasping is near completion. Depending on the health of the hoof, this process can take up a lot of time and must be done with care so as not to hurt the animal, and also to avoid exposing any soft tissue such as the frog from damage and infection. Such maintenance is standard practice for horse owners and operators, although by the 1950s in Liverpool, such operators were becoming less visible, mostly confined to dairy wagons, local hauliers and rag and bone men. As a record of a way of life that was coming to an end, Hargreaves' photograph achieves its purpose with considerable aplomb, but as a work of art, it is perhaps more successful for what it manages to leave out. The solemn poetry of the farrier at his work, utterly oblivious to the times a-changing around him, may stand as a romantic paean to traditional means of toil and labour, an open defiance against change and modernity. As such, the picture is a deliberate throwback to an earlier time that is still very much part of the present.